What? No. You don't have it? It should be in one of your emails, but if not, hold on, I'm just sending it to you. The alter ego, is that what you're on? SKS.
Hello, Terry.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Are you back on campus today?
I went into campus today. I don't have central air in my apartment, and I figured that in order to chair, these sessions, it would be better if I were in a place that were cool and relatively silent. So,
Yes. Oh, well, I'm glad. It's good that you have a place that you can go. I'm on campus too, but they don't have air conditioning on the weekends. I just
oh
found
my
out.
gosh.
It's a little annoying. But there's good Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I'm listening ish, but I'm also reading comics. I'm playing video games after breakfast. So I was reading. Yeah. Okay. So hair request a hug. I feel like I didn't get one of those this morning.
You didn't. We woke up and started doing shit immediately.
Okay, we can hear you, Keith.
Inappropriately.
Do your penis wiggle.
Penis.
Darby, is that you at Sessions A Summit 1?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I was just making sure that I knew who to direct people to in case there were any technical issues. I'm Terry. I'm chairing this session with you and then the next one.
How are you, Darby?
Good. I don't know who said that. Sorry.
Sarah said it.
Oh, sorry. To get everything to work right, I'm on two separate computers at the same time also for different things. So it's a little hairy.
We so appreciate you. Thank you. And I loved your session.
It seems like that was already feels like it was 2 weeks ago.
I know.
In a good way though, so much good information. I don't know. It seems like in some ways it feels like we've all been together for this for 5 minutes, and in some ways it feels like weeks, right?
One of his TV shows.
Yes, just a reminder, as you may see in the chat for the CCSD folks, make sure to put your name in the chat, just in case you haven't seen that already.
I look like Harry Potter when I wear this.
No, yeah.
When I look at you, I look like Harry Potter. I was like a real question.
Okay, well, I see that it's 9:30, so we should go ahead and get started to make sure that both of our presentations have plenty of time to share their fantastic ideas with us. Hello, my name is Terry Sweeko, and I am chairing this session for the Young Adult Literature strand. We have two wonderful presentations. Today, we have developing a more inclusive high school curriculum through a young adult literature elective emphasizing diversity, and the exploration of Black mental health in young adult literature. Before I have the presenters take center stage, just a few technical notes. As you probably heard when you entered the room, the session is being recorded. We have about 50 minutes for the session total, so we'll dedicate about 20 minutes each to each presentation, and then have 8 to 10 minutes for questions. Presenters, I will kindly interrupt each presentation after you've gone 20 minutes, just to make sure that we have time for questions. And audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to share them with me in the chat, and I will ask them after the two presentations are done. As Darby was saying, if you are from CCSD and you haven't already done so, please put your name in the chat. And if you have any technical issues, please feel free to direct them to our host, Darby Simpson. And I think she's showing up in as Sessions A Summit 1 in the participant list. The session does work best if you switch your view to speaker view rather than gallery view, because it lets you focus on the speakers. And for the sake of bandwidth, we do ask that you mute your mics and turn off your cameras if you aren't presenting. I am now very excited to turn this over to our first set of presenters who will introduce themselves. And they are Kimberly, Dyar, and Samantha Heil from Rising Sun High School, and Mary Beth Barbro from Highlands Elementary.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Samantha Heil. I'm an English teacher from Maryland. I've been teaching for about 13 years. I'm currently teaching 9th grade ELA, and I also run a blog called Samantha in Secondary, where I talk about a lot of ELA topics.
I'm Kimberly Dyar. I'm a media specialist at the same high school that Samantha works at. I have been an English teacher in a previous incarnation, and Mary Beth Barbro will be joining us via a recorded video. She was not able to join us in person today. We have put additional resources in the slides, so I'll post in the chat the, actually I'll share with the presenter the link to our documents so that that can be shared in the chat. And there are additional resources in the notes section of our slides that we have also linked within some of the slides. So we encourage you to get a copy of the slides and review them as we're presenting and afterwards as well.
All right, so we wanted to share with you some community demographics for where we teach, which is Cecil County, Maryland. So you could get an overview of where we are and kind of our goal with this young adult elective. You can see from the numbers, I just moved my box over here. The Cecil County, Maryland is about 88% white. There's only 7% Black, and everything else is very, very small. There's not a lot of diversity in this area. You can also see that while the high school graduation rate is fairly high at almost 90%, the bachelor's degree rate is only about 24%. And while the median household income is almost 77,000, that number is spread across families quite widely. The amount of inequity in the area is quite great. So our high school is very indicative of the county at large. You can see the county at large reflected in our high school. It's called Rising Sun High School in Rising Sun, Maryland. The student body breakdown, we've got about 92% white. The rest of the school is, the numbers are quite small. We actually only have 6 Black students, 5 American Indian, 55 Hispanic, and 10 Asian Pacific Islander out of 1,100 students total. So you can see how little diversity we really have. 25% of our students qualify for free and reduced meals. We have less than 5% of our ESOL population, again, less than 1% Black students, and 20% or so students with disabilities. So that's just an overview of the demographics of our school.
Our community has a number of challenges based on its history. Our community is very rural. There's a stable population with little movement, which means that in a lot of ways, attitudes are not inclusive of or reflective of the world that we live in today. Some of the things that we deal with are sort of stuck in the past and in older mindsets. The most common occupation is farming, and education is not a priority for some families in our school. We have a hate group history that is pretty extensive. The hate group is still in existence in our community, and there's current activity. As recent as 2 weeks ago, we had to deal with 2 of our honor students at our school creating a video for Snapchat that can only be described as hate speech. And we also, I've had personal experiences with this in my teaching within this community. About 15 years ago, I was driving home from school and saw a cross burning within view of 95. There had an encounter with a student who had read To Kill a Mockingbird and responded vehemently to it, saying, my grandparents were racist, my parents were racist, and I'm going to be even more racist than they are, as part of a regular class discussion. And there's just a lot of pressure that students face in terms of different ethnic background. There are other forms of pressure and other forms of diversity that are welcome to different degrees within our school community. We have a small but active GSA, and we do have a number of books to support that in our regular collection that students have had a voice in purchasing and have had a voice in how we shelve them and how we display them as part of our library advisory committee. We have not had a book challenged on that basis, but we have had a number of book challenges that have ended up in the newspaper before for other issues. Our district has made some recent changes from the top down, trying to address some of these things with restorative practices and trauma-informed discipline training. And the language arts curriculum has recently been reframed in a social justice framework. That's sort of top-down change, and we're envisioning this course as sort of a grassroots up change for students in our school. We have a need for more electives and choices for students. We have a very narrow curriculum with very few electives, so it was important to us to get this to be available to them. And there's a lack of YA in the curriculum. Our curriculum is sort of split between teaching the classics, and newer books that have been added have been really tied to the Lexile levels recommended by the Common Core. And so they tend to be adult books that aren't real appealing and that have a very high Lexile level. We've worked for several years to get this course to come about, and we're working to develop greater awareness and appreciation of diversity in all its forms among our students as a result of this class. We want to provide a safe space for students to explore lives of people who are not like them and who they don't experience in their local community, and to provide brave spaces for the kinds of uncomfortable, awkward conversations they have to have in order to be able to challenge some of the things that they've grown up with. And hopefully this will eventually lead to us being able to have more difficult conversations in the larger community. This is a video that we showed at the various high schools in order to promote the class. YA literature is an elective that provides you with an opportunity to explore many recently written books created for a teen audience, books that you might choose for yourself from a library or bookstore. If you enjoy reading for pleasure and like trying new books, this class would be an excellent opportunity to earn credit for something you already enjoy doing. YA Lit examines books in various genres featuring diverse writers, characters, and storylines. In each genre, you will delve into an excellent book as a class prior to self-selecting books for independent reading. Creative activities, discussions, and writing assignments will guide you into a deeper understanding as you develop your unique voice as a reader and writer. If you are a motivated reader ready to broaden your interests, this class is for you. YA literature is an elective that provides you with an opportunity. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about what our course looks like, and the scope and sequence is a big part of that. We developed the scope and sequence as a genre-based class, and so we have 4 units total. The first one is historical fiction, which is led by All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Dyar. We then have our second unit, which is mystery and romance combined. In mystery, we used We Were Liars by Emily Lockhart, and we used Meet Cute, which is a compilation of short stories, which really run the gamut as far as diversity goes. Our third unit is realistic fiction, and we used Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. And our fourth unit is speculative fiction, in which we use, actually we use a lot of different novels as mentor texts, but the main one we focused on was Seed by M.T. Anderson. The scope and sequence includes a lot of our activities and things that we do. We really delved into literary criticism using the developmental psychological lens to really increase that deep thinking. We do embed a lot of creative writing, process writing, and things like that. We try to focus the lessons in mini units based on real issues in the field. So we did an entire week on Banned Books Week for censorship. We talk about bibliotherapy a lot. We did an author study. We again talked about literary criticism. We talked a lot about underrepresentation of many different types of people and types of diversity. And Kimberly will talk a little bit about that lesson in the presentation later. But yes, you can see all of the books that we listed, not only our mentor texts, but also the list of books that we recommended to students in that scope and sequence link from the presentation. Students were also allowed to self-select. So if they didn't find any of the ones that we recommended interesting, they were allowed to go ahead and choose whatever it was that they wanted to read. We did get parent permission slips at the beginning of the course to make sure that parents knew that they were self-selecting, and just to be cognizant of that as we went through the course. So there are some samples of our instruction and our projects here that you can look at. The Reading Across Cultures lesson was something that Mary Beth Barbro will speak about a little bit in this video clip. It was a foundational lesson for how we approach the course. We really took on issues of privilege, identity, empathy, forced identities, and racial anxiety. And we did this in a hybrid setting in which some students never came into the school. They were virtual and online the whole time. And so it was really challenging for us to have these difficult conversations in that educational setting. And we did so through a series of activities that included anonymous surveys where we could preview the survey data and then share the summary data so that we could talk about the ideas and the feelings without any one person having to own that particular thought or feeling. That just made it a safer environment. The curation project was sort of developing a mini museum of resources tied to the themes and ideas within the choice novels. The realistic fiction video lecture gives you an idea of the kind of mini lessons that we did to introduce the genres and the ways we explored different diversities there. Speed date with a book was one of the ways we exposed students to different choice novels. Here's Mary Beth talking about brave spaces. That was really important to how we approach things.
Have developed that empathy. And in that, the concept of not just safe spaces for sharing, but brave spaces for sharing came about. And so here at my school, we have had many staff members start to really create brave spaces here at our school, and they're really sharing racism that they've experienced in their lives that some other staff members we have no idea about. And it's really difficult for them to share, but they have opened up and shared those experiences. And that has really created a climate here where we're becoming more understanding and can put ourselves a little bit in other people's shoes. And so Kim asked me to kind of take that into my lessons for her students. And so I was able to do that through some of my various lessons and help the students to know that they were safe, but also it was okay to share and to be brave in our lessons. It was okay to say that, you know, they didn't have a lot of experience with different cultures, or they might not know, or that maybe they do want to explore them or check out. We really tried to create a climate where students could share, they could be anonymous, but they could still start to share those feelings. So that's what I just encourage everyone to do, is to take it to the next level. From just a safe space, try to really, with students and really everyone that you meet, to create brave spaces, that it's okay to share, and that that's really how real growth and learning will take place. It might be hard, it's going to be difficult, but it's necessary, because we know that real learning will take place when we are brave and we
Okay, so if you take a look on that slide, you can see some of our student work samples from various assignments we did throughout the year. For historical fiction, we focused on settings, so each unit was linked with a literary element. So you can see some of the students' setting samples there. We also did some work with, in mystery, students did a roll a mystery lesson, which they really enjoyed, where they rolled for different plot points and created a mystery based on those plot points. You also see some of the blackout poetry we've done, and just some other work samples that we thought would be interesting for you to take a look at the kind of activities that we did.
Here are some resources that we found helpful. We both read very broadly in print and online. We are constantly modeling, trying to expand our worldview to our students. And so we need to really be open to challenging our own thinking. And I want to especially draw your attention to Hoopla. If you have a public library that your school is in partnership with, and if you don't even, you can encourage students to get library cards. This is a simultaneous access platform for a great variety of audio and ebooks, as well as other forms of media. And they're free and they're multi-access. So if you are doing a class and you're trying to get access to a lot of text that your school doesn't have the money to buy, you can use a library card and access them for free. And their offerings are wonderful and wonderfully diverse.
So advocating this course was a big part of getting it off the ground. So we wanted to really give some tips for advocacy in the era of Common Core. The first tip is to definitely find someone to go on this journey with you if you're interested in creating a course like this, because it is a big undertaking. So finding someone to split the workload with is a really big deal. Address the lexile concerns at the beginning. We have found that, especially in our district, they don't want to put lower lexile text into our curriculum just because of the lexile number, and they don't look at the complexity of what's included in the text. So we did a lot of research on that to craft arguments and align them with district policies. In order to address some of the inequities with access, we did a lot of different formats like print versus digital. We did audiobooks, we did ebooks, things like that. Institutionalize your work. I saw someone earlier ask how many people took this course. And so we were the pilot of this course, and it was only 10 to start. But now the course is being offered throughout the entire county, and we're going to be in 3 schools next year. So we're pretty excited about running that. And then leverage your students as advocates. We did a lot of work around gathering feedback from students and making sure that other people were able to see that feedback. So that was really important for making sure this course stays. Just a few more advocacy tips. Try to align with your district strategic plan, and then really work with the CCSS. If you look at our scope and sequence, you see how we really did work with the standards to make sure that other people see the validity of it as well. Our content coordinator has been really great in helping us get this off the ground, and she sees the importance of it as well. So that using those arguments is really important. If you look at our model rationale at the bottom there, that link, you'll see some of the legwork that we did before we went into any meetings using the books that we wanted to use. We did a lot of research surrounding, awards that they've won and critiques and things like that. And we really made the case for our mentor text before we went into any meeting. So show, don't tell wherever possible. Use your lessons, your resources, and your student work samples to really make something like this get off the ground.
Here are some tips for a good collaborative relationship. I'm not going to hit all of them, but I want to say honesty is absolutely essential when you're working with a collaborator. You need to be able to be direct without personalizing comments, and you need to have the ability to navigate conflict and differences of opinion. There were several points where we had a different vision for how things were going to go once we were in the thick of writing the curriculum. And our ability to talk through that and work through it was essential. It was also really important for us to be aware of what we each needed as an educator, our own philosophies and approaches. We're very different from each other in all of those areas, but we have a good partnership. We're able to work together well. We're able to critique each other's work to improve our work. And that has been essential to making this course really rich. It's also important to be real pragmatic about what works with students. And you need to know how to work within instructional and institutional constraints, and you need to know how to work around them when you're dealing with a course if you're truly going to make it open and challenging. It was also important for us to know how to ask for help when we needed it. A year is a long time, and we had different strengths. Samantha's excellent about knowing what will engage students. I tend to be a little more abstract, but sometimes I push the thinking a little more too. So we were able to lean into what each one of us was good at and each grow as a result of that. Be sure to leverage your partners. If you are an English teacher, use a media specialist. If you're a media specialist, tap into a good English teacher. Here's our contact info. We would be delighted to discuss or share any of our work or responses with you at greater length. We want to stay within the time limit. So that's what we have to share with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic, and it was actually perfectly timed, Samantha and Kimberly, so I appreciate that. Our next presenter is Deleon Awill from Baton Rouge Magnet High School.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so let me go ahead and get in here and share my screen. 1 second. Share. Okay. See, now this makes this hard to start from here. Okay. Hold on, y'all. This is blocking my ability to start the show. Hold on. There we go. I had to move that out of the way. Okay, there we go. Everyone sees what I see? Yes, we're good?
Yes.
Gotta make sure. I learned that from this school year. Always gotta check. All right, so I want to talk about the exploration of Black mental health in YA literature. So this is definitely a personal thing. This particular presentation definitely hits home. So I'm gotta reveal my subjectivity by admitting that yes, this is something that is very personal. So I will have views. I did try to make sure that it didn't cloud the research though. So, all right. So for me, I wanted to first kind of touch on mental health in the Black community, because this isn't something that's massively talked about. I feel like there are books and there's research, but mainstream wise, not talked about a lot. Typically in the past and still currently, if you had a mental health problem or trauma or something along that line, it was typically something that was handled through community and friends. Black community was not, kind of still not very trustful of having doctors or anything like that, and that kind of stems from a history of having a population kind of misused by the medical community. I think some of you may be familiar with the Tuskegee project. If you're not, it was a experiment where the participants were given syphilis on purpose, essentially being experimented upon, and it was under false pretenses. And they went to a Tuskegee, which was an HBCU area, and it not a very good thing, but that did, because of that project, that did change a lot of things about how research is done. But a lot of things stemming from that, and many more that I could talk about, kind of causes distrust with the medical community. So you handle your mental health issues with your friends, with your family. Also, there's a very prominent religious element. You talk to your pastor if you have problems or something. Typically we hear, I'm gonna pray that mental demon out of you. You hear that a lot, and I'm like, pray it out. So that is something that has historically happened and it's still prominent today. I'm not going to say it's not. Also, I talked to my mom about it too. Of course, I saw this in the literature, but I talked to my mom about it. My mom is, in her 60s. She's a baby boomer. I kind of talked to her, what was the issue? Because she even struggled for a while with me personally getting a therapist. And she's just like, this is, mental issues are taboo. She's like, you don't admit that you have something wrong with you because you have to be this like perfect Black person, like you have to show out. So you can't show any mental weakness, right? So this is something that has played into this. And I wanted to kind of see if this would show up in the literature a little bit. And it kind of did, actually. And accessibility also is a small issue, and you just flat out ignore it. Essentially, you don't have mental problems, you ignore that. So, I am lucky to be able to have a therapist who I feel like I can relate to personally, but that isn't always the case. So that is just kind of a little bit of a background there. So some of the things that I've run into from like looking at the literature and also kind of gleaning a couple of young adult literature books, reading a couple of them multiple times because I've liked them. Violence, the traumas that you will see will be violence. That's one of them, particularly discriminatory, racially motivated. Excuse me. So one of my book suggestions is Hate You Give, and we've definitely seen it in that, right? Sexual assault. This was actually the trauma that caused me to want to research this. And seeing how sexual assault was handled in YA lit, particularly, with a Black family. Spoiler alert, the book that I do talk about, not handled well at all. Also racism, and I do have my book next to me. There was a study that someone did. It's in a book called African American Identity. And this particular study hits close to home because they actually conducted this particular study in rural central Louisiana, which is where I'm from. And they went through the study of basically how racism affects, Black young adults and youth. And, their conclusions was, and I'm just reading from what they say, because it is a they. They say that the results indicated that anxiety and depressive symptoms Two of the most prevalent adolescent mental health concerns are associated with exposure to racism and discrimination, exposure to violence, as well as the challenges that typically occur during adolescence. So there's this idea that it is that discrimination and racism literally makes you sick. Like it amplifies the issues of mental illness, of depression and anxiety. Also, and this is something I added in here because this is something that happened in my area. I am from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And we did have the Alton Sterling shooting in 2016. And the video just kept being circulated everywhere. Like there was no getting away from it. Like watching the George Floyd thing was hard, but you watched Alton Sterling, you watched him get shot on camera like you saw it. So there's been a lot of talk amongst, and this is mostly social media, to hide these videos or at least block them or not share it so much, because that's causing trauma, like say collective trauma, because everybody is watching this exact same video of a person being killed, probably for discriminatory reasons if it's on social media like that widely put out there, and it's a disturbing image. So that causes a collective trauma. For this reason, many of my friends and, a lot of colleagues, we purposely tell people like to put that filter on your social media so that you don't look at this if you don't want to. All right, so let's talk a little about bibliotherapy just very, very quickly, because that does become an element here. I want to suggest, or it could be suggested, that bibliotherapy could actually be a way to encounter these novels that have these particular themes and traumas present in them in the classroom. Bibliotherapy actually has a background in church ministry. Kind of interesting for me to say that, because I just said that religion is a big, historically changing, view of how to handle mental health issues in the AA community. But the idea of bibliotherapy, it has kind of fallen out of professional vogue because, this idea that you prescribe a specific book, to help people to heal themselves. It's not necessarily the angle to go at it. It's the idea that maybe you could read these books, and discuss the collective trauma that is visible within the books. We wouldn't prescribe a specific one. At least I wouldn't, and that's not what the research says you should do anymore. But it does help to have these discussions in a classroom, particularly if you are dealing with a classroom that does not have a lot of this particular population. So if I'm talking about Black literature and you have a group where you do not have a lot of Black students, this kind of helps to, deal with this trauma across the lines, if you will. So I would also suggest, focus on how the trauma is displayed, because it brings this level of relatability. I don't know if any of you read our keynote earlier, but the literature, young adult lit, that has this stuff in it really brings the relatability to the characters. But if you're not used to seeing these types of characters, you're going to need somebody to kind of help you out a little bit, understanding where it's coming from. Otherwise, it could be misinterpreted and so on and so forth. So that's kind of my idea of bibliotherapy, that this could kind of be therapeutic, kind of create this healing within the classroom. So ways that I kind of think that we should go about this. Don't shy away from the books that deal with the trauma. And it's hard because even at my school, and my school is wonderfully diverse, my district is not. It is majority Black, but my school is, because it's magnet, it is pretty diverse down the lines, very, very equitable. But we still have trouble, dealing and reading these kinds of books, because there are parents who have issues with this and don't sit there and bring this liberal agenda to my children and so on and so forth. And that happens. So I would definitely say, I hate to say get parent permission, but get parent permission, because if you don't need to, cool. If you do, great. You know what your school is. Get everyone involved. Tap your librarian. So I'm personally a librarian. So tap your librarians to do this. They are knowledgeable. They're not saying anyone else is not, but when you spend your whole time around books, this is your thing you do. So if you need some suggestions or ideas or themes, tap your librarian, get them involved. I also would say your guidance counselors. So when I was talking about this particular project with a fellow coworker, I was like, I don't want us to be just the only ones that are doing this, or the teachers are the only ones that are encountering this. Like, let's get our guidance counselors to help to delineate this trauma, or get someone from the community who is a psychologist or a psychiatrist or social workers to kind of talk to students about what's going on in these books, right? So we need to acknowledge the trauma in the book. We can't ignore that part. A couple of ways that I really have seen work, at least, other than class discussions, is dialectical journals, actually. Students are honest in those journals. Like they really go, sound like my kids, they go ham. They're very honest about it. And they will, in dialectical journals, I feel like gives the students a chance to really reflect on what they're reading and really ingest it and kind of like, grapple with it. And I think that grappling is what's most important, right? So, and if you want to start small and okay, maybe I don't do this on the classroom scale, do a book club or bring it to one of your clubs at your school if y'all have that. I find that that's a good way as well. All right, so I do have some book suggestions. I'll kind of explain to you why I have those. For more obvious reasons, The Hate U Give and it's obviously still a very spicy book as far as people are concerned, because it does talk about police violence, and it does really, strikes a nerve with people. It does, and it's going to continue to do so. And it's very poignant right now because this is something that we're dealing with. But I feel like that this is something that can be dealt with across the board with all cultures, because this is something that, at least in the United States, I know for sure that we're all dealing with. It's not just Black students, it's everybody. This next book is one that I actually do have a teacher at my school who does teach this book. All American Boys is an amazing book. Of course, it's Jason Reynolds, but it's an amazing book. Basically, one character, it's two boys, same age. One character is brutalized by the police, and the other boy who saw it, who was white, he saw the whole thing. So like now we kind of have this moment. Should I tell what happened? Will people hate me if I say that this happened? I know what the truth is. I know it's being spun by the media. So you kind of get to see from both of their viewpoints on how all of this is going on. And I love it for that particular reason. So it gives your students from different backgrounds a chance to be able to see differing points of view, but it's also still a trauma. Okay, let's be real with ourselves. So again, your class is encountering this trauma. I love Black Girl Unlimited. And y'all notice that a lot of my books are recent. I tried to pull the most recent ones. Black Girl Unlimited is pretty much autobiographical. It does deal with poverty, sexual trauma, drugs, and colorism is actually a thing. If you are not familiar with the term colorism, it's this basically, if your skin is in the Black community, your skin is lighter, you're considered to be more beautiful. If your hair texture is not quite so kinky, basically the more closer to a Eurocentric vibe that you have, the more beautiful you are, and the darker that you are, the less that you are. So Echo Brown does talk about dealing with those things, and colorism is definitely a trauma, and something that a lot of people don't know about. I didn't even know that colorism was a thing in other cultures for a very long time until one of my friends from India and from Bangladesh actually told me. So again, you kind of have to, you read these books to actually understand that those things do happen. Imani Al-Mine is, there's sexual assault. It does happen in the book. And Imani does, her mom, and she ends up getting pregnant. And her mom beats her for it. So when I say not handled well, not handled well. But Imani didn't discuss the fact with her mom that she was raped, but she does end up having a school counselor. This book does end very sadly. It's not the most tidy ending. It is very, very sad, but it is a powerful book. And again, it's a book that has been rated on a lower reading level. And I'm going to be bluntly honest about this. I do find, and as a person who has a reading program at their school, books do, a lot of the African-American books I've noticed get rated a lot lower in Lexile and in reading level. And I've always kind of had an issue with that, but that does happen. So this book is rated on a lower reading level, but the complexity of the book is definitely for like older kids. So Home is a book that's personal, because I am very much so like the main character. She suffers from depression and anxiety. Like she has an anxiety attack in the book, and it's so descriptively perfect. It's insane, right? But she ends up getting shipped off to Canada. She's from Trinidad and Tobago, and she ends up getting shipped off to Canada. And all she really wants to do is just go home. And obviously this does not help her depression and anxiety. But it does show her working through this. I also like this book because it does show a Black girl, a Black female figure as having vulnerability, as having weakness. And excuse me, stereotypically Black women, so we got some intersections going on here, are not seen as vulnerable. It's always strong Black woman, right? So to have a character have those vulnerabilities, I feel like it's powerful. And again, a great moment to have in the classroom and talk about that. Dear Martin, again, we have a moment with police violence. Hush, I do love Jacqueline Woodson. Instead of the character having depression, her dad has it actually. So it kind of talks about dealing with a parent that has mental issues. And it's a very short book. I've heard some people say, yay, we love short books because they go quick and they're tidy. Not the tidiest ending, which is what I kind of really like about what I'm suggesting. But again, it's very interesting to see the main character grapple with having a parent that basically is so depressed that like he doesn't even function well. So that again, that brings that relatability and that realness, because in Black community, we don't acknowledge mental illness too often. We're better about it now, but we don't. And historically we haven't. And therefore people outside of the community don't know that this is something that we grapple with too, like the humanness of it, if you will. And Felix Ever After is such a good book. The main character is transgender, and Felix, you get to see Felix's interaction with his mom and his dad. And you get this understanding of why his dad can't deal with Felix being transgender so well. So you understand dad's viewpoint, but you also understand Felix's as well. Felix actually, unfortunately, is the recipient of a lot of transphobic messaging. So there's transphobia and homophobia present in the book. And that is also a trauma. Now that's a relatable trauma because that's not something that's just indigenous to the Black community, clearly. So our intersections kind of spread out here. So trying to check my clock. Yep, okay, we're good. So yeah, that's basically my wrap up. You know your populations better than I do, but I do implore you to give this a shot, because I feel like that. Of course, if I were, which I was before at Baton Rouge High, I was at McKinley High, which is a majority Black school. Whenever books like this were given to students, or whenever these were studied, we had these moments where we could talk about this stuff a lot more openly. And for schools that do not have a Black community, it helps to give a lens into what's actually going on. Like, people don't have these assumptions of what they see on TV. There's a realistic display. And I like that about these books. This is by no means, by the way, an exhaustive list. There is more, there's always more, right? I want to put into the chat bar as well a website that actually talks about biopics. So, Black, Indigenous people, color, that does have mental health issues, and they like kind of talk about it. And then there's a grappling. I know I just focused on African Americans, but I don't want, I want this to expand. I want this to grow. Let me see if I can stop sharing. Hold on. New share. No, I don't want a new share. I want to give it up. Pause share. Okay. Nope, that did not take, did that take it off y'all screen? Okay. Stop sharing. There we go. Okay, y'all, I'm much better with Google Classroom. That was my sweet spot this school year, okay? But I do want to put in the chat, okay. Oh, I see y'all's chats now. I do want to talk about this. Like, y'all, let's talk, because it's boring to just watch a person talk at you.
Well, we have some really great comments and questions in the chat for both presenters. Kimberly and Samantha, I know you answered the question about how many students ended up taking the class. There was also, a comment of congratulations on making a strong case and expanding the class to several schools, which is very, impressive and sounds so needed. Dr. Chia Pardon had a question. Given the challenges you discussed surrounding the rurality of your school and some of the ideologies that come along with that, I'm wondering if you've considered, or if you do this, how you teach texts written from rural perspectives that are critical of those very ideologies. And if you have done this, what kind of reactions or engagement have you gotten from the students?
Trying to think.
I'm sorry, I don't know if it's my
any that
connection or yours, but something keeps going in and out. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So addressing the question of rurality, I know that in our English curriculum, they actually have several texts that address some of those issues with our students. I know we teach hillbilly elegy, and we teach some other texts that really kind of dig into those roots and those questions. We don't have any specific, anything specific in the YA course, but that's always a great idea and I love the presentation we just watched, talking about having conversations about trauma and everything, and just thinking about ways to, bring that into our course as well, because that wasn't a focus of ours this year, but I think it absolutely should be.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Dr. Awill, we've gotten some really great comments on the importance of the work that you're doing, specifically the topic of mental health in the Black community. Juliana Beher wanted to know, how do we talk about racial issues and other issues without making students relive the past trauma? Because I think that is something that we've been hearing a lot about in the past year, particularly in the wake of George Floyd. How do we broach these topics without re-traumatizing our students?
So that's actually been a very touchy thing. I know for the Alton Sterling thing, it was healing for the school that I was at to actually acknowledge it, but then our students would just get so angry. So in order to kind of not re-traumatize the students, this is why I actually say, let's tap the guidance counselors on this, because and our social workers, because they have beautiful ways of being able to acknowledge that, yes, this did happen, but we want to see how to move forward. I feel like redirecting students to the future and saying, okay, this has happened in the past and we're learning from the past history, and kind of redirecting the students to feel like they have a power, to feel like they have a say in being able to disrupt the systems that led to these traumas. Kind of softens the blow a little bit by empowering them, and they actually go out and want to make the changes. I know that after this happened, and after a couple of these books that we read, a lot of students in their senior projects in the upcoming year actually did talk about this kind of stuff and did acknowledge this, but they're a part of their community senior project, which I absolutely loved and thought was beautiful. I was touched. So yes, redirection, I feel like it, and empowering students to say, okay, yes, this happened, but we can make a change, I feel like really makes a big difference. But definitely use those mental health experts, because I'm certainly not, and I'm not going to say it. And when parents call, you need your guidance counselors to help you. So that's my idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And I think that ties in very nicely to with what Kimberly and Samantha were also talking about earlier, this idea of, if you're going to do this work, don't do it alone. Reach out and get, other people on board, and get, other experts on board. Just a question, for all of our presenters is, as you are, recommending these books, or, as you are implementing this class, what sort of response did you get from administrators, from other teachers, from, the students and parents? Were they supportive? Was there any pushback?
we were piloting the course and writing the curriculum this year. And so we invited students to the class that we had experience with in other areas of the school, other classes. Many of them took Samantha as a teacher before for their English class. So we had an audience that was really receptive, which we felt was important as we were trying out a lot of ideas and we were trying to push the envelope with the curriculum. We had very supportive parents because the students were readers. And so even though some of their parents were very conservative, they were very supportive of broad reading. I know one parent in particular, I know did not agree with many of our choices, but supported her son as a reader and trusted his instincts. So that was good. I feel like from the curriculum standpoint, we were a bit under the radar. We'll probably, Samantha, would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes,
So
I would say this year we definitely flew under the radar to the point where I think we were a little nervous it wasn't going to run again next year. So we'll have to make sure we do a little more advertisement next year. But we are excited that it's going to go into other schools now and other schools that have different populations than we do, because while our county numbers might look one way, the schools that are in our district look very different than ours do. And we did send letters home at the beginning of the course to make sure parents knew that they needed to be monitoring what their students were reading as we continued. But I think we had overall pretty good support from parents. But again, these were students who were already readers and knew what we were getting into. If we were doing some of these lessons, I think in a general education classroom, I feel like I'd probably be getting a lot more pushback.
Yeah. And Dr. Awill, how about you?
I agree. I know that the biggest fear, I told you I kind of shot this past another coworker, the biggest fear is doing these in general classrooms because, despite the diversity at the school, we do have a lot of conservative parents who are not comfortable discussing a lot of things, a lot of this stuff, despite the fact that our parish, so we have parishes instead of counties. So our parish is, very much so a large population of African Americans. Our city itself is way more African American. And we do have a lot of racial struggles down here. The way that the teacher that did do All American Boys did it, she didn't completely focus on the racial aspect of it, but it went well with her class and her students. It would be this particular stuff that I'm talking about would go over much better in the African American literature course that we do have at the school. And they do read books like this in that book. In that course, so it's more comfortable when it's in an elective, but I do want to push the envelope. African American lives is not an elective, it's history. So I try to tell people let's get away from that, but we definitely have some issues, and the biggest thing is being honest with parents. I think letting parents know, yes, this is the book that we're going to study. If y'all didn't know, we recently did have a representative who did try to stop the teaching of critical race theory in our classrooms. He ended up getting kicked off his committee in Congress, out the education committee. So, but that did happen.
Times of
what happened, Dr. Bickmore?
Times of Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
Louisiana just made Juneteenth a holiday, so that's gonna be good. It was so great to have new people that I didn't know. Deleon is an old student, but the new group, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job, good information. And I think it's Darby that's hosting this one. Darby, if you can remember to end it and start again, that helps it for download purposes. If you're CCSD, add your name to the chat. And Darby, I think it automatically saves the chat, but if you can, you might want to cut and paste the chat before you close it.
Already done. Already doing it.
Okay. What a champ. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you very much.